So like this, these are some available extractants were used for the for knowing the identifying or determining the um, plants plant sample or soil sample in soil science. So next one is digestion block. This is the digestion block, students. Actually, this is a very old model. Here you can see some temperature control, and there is some asbestos will be there, some aluminum sheet will be there here. And these are in this we use in this this glass tubes will be now in this we add some acid, some strong acid, and we put our sample and we will digest it and we'll check the temperature here. This is very old digestion block, but nowadays it is coming in integrated mode. So it will digestion block will be on top and integrated there will timer will be there. So this digestion block mostly used for our plant sample analysis. Okay, plant sample analysis we use digestion blocks mostly, diacid triacids we use, but after when digestion block comes, everything's work become very simple. So anyhow, student, this is our major topic in today, that is called the atomic absorption spectrometer, which you usually sees, and atomic emission spectrometer. And in this emission spectrometer, you can see some inductively coupled plasma, very costly instrument it is, and mass spectroscope and auto analyzer. Auto analyzer we will see only in research laboratories, even mass spectroscopy also we can see in very pure science students. What in soil science we usually follows this ASS, atomic absorption spectrometer, used for the micronutrient analysis. Some extent you can some universities we can go up to the emission spectroscope-meter, and very top class universities we can see mass spectroscopy. But auto analyzer you can see in some research oriented laboratories only. Now we will see, very first we will see what is the background of the spectroscopy. As given in this definition, spectroscopy is used to use of the absorption. Listen, students, spectroscopy is used for absorption, emission, scattering of electromagnetic radiation by atoms or molecules. Yes, you know. So very first we will see this one. So spectroscopy used for absorption, emission, scattering of electromagnetic radiation of atoms and molecules to qualitatively or quantitatively study the atoms or molecules or study the physical properties. No, that is it. This is nothing but spectroscopy is nothing but what happening in our spectroscopy. Either some absorption will take in place, or some emission will be taken place, or some scattering. Mostly the turbidimeter usually we see. That is called some scattering we can see, an electromagnetic radiation of different atoms and molecules. So the interaction of radiation with matter can cause redirection of the radiation and or transition between the energy levels of atom and molecule. This is usually we seen in our if you go back to your go back to your basic fundamental chemistry, you can see that any atom is irradiated or given some extra energy. Either when they're jumping from one energy level to another energy level. I say for example, if they jump from low to higher energy level, what will happen? The energy will be observed. At the same time, when they jump from the higher energy level to lower energy level, what will happen? Energy will be released. So, well, how this happens? Because of our so-called interaction of radiation, interaction of our light and radiation. Now we will see so now we can say a transition from, so this is, please remember student, a transition from lower level to higher level. I think this color is not fit. Oh, sorry. From lower level to higher level, yeah, from lower level to higher level with the transfer of energy from the radiation field. That means whatever radiation we feel to the atoms or molecules is called the absorption. So energy will be observed, students. You know all these things. This is a very basic fundamental chemistry. From lower level to higher energy level, when the molecule when the electron will transfer, what will happen? There will be absorption of energy will be taken place. Same thing, student. The transition from higher level to lower level is called emission. So there will be, you can see emission. If the energy is transferred, the radiation field or the non-radioactive decay of the non-radiation emitted. So there will be, it is a non-radiation energy, students. Don't think that is different. Radiation energy is different. Emission is different. So you should remember only two things. When low to high, what will happen? Energy will be observed. So absorption will take in place. When reverse, ulta, what will happen? High to low means energy will be released. Emission will be taken place. So while we are doing analysis, this is what happening when we using that flame photometer. What will happen? We usually feed that our sample to that nebulizer, that sample will suck in the nebulizer. What will happen? The energies will be excited. What will happen? The energy will be released, emission will be taken place. So what will happen? We will calculate that energy and we will determine how much percentage of potassium is present. And this potassium, how we are going to find out this potassium in flame photometer? We use filters, students. We usually filters. In very olden days, in very olden instruments, what we will do, manually they will insert the filters in the flame photometer. But nowadays everything is digitized, so we digitally we will control the which element we need. Mostly in flame photometer, how many elements we can find out in flame photometer? Can you list out?
5 elements.
What are those? What are those?
Potassium, calcium, rubidium, cesium, lithium.
Rubidium, cesium, lithium. Mostly in agriculture point of view, we use only for potassium and calcium. Even in soil science, we won't use for calcium this one. Maybe some universities they may use. Anyhow, coming to the point, students. So redirection of light due to the interaction with the matter is called scattering. Mostly this you can see in turbidimetry. Turbidimetry usually call that. You can see the scattering will be taking place. So absorption, emission. Now we are dealing about the scattering, and may or may not occur with transfer of energy. Here in these two we can see some transfer, some exchange of energy will be taking place, but here may or may not be occurring of the transferring of energy. The scattering radiation is slightly different or same way. So the scatter radiation is then, so what the so-called scattering is, I will say, for example, students, everyone knows the turbidimetry method of sulfur estimation. I hope so, the barium chloride method. Have anybody have idea about that method? Barium chloride method, we usually while doing, we are analyzing, or we will add 1 gram of barium chloride to that sample. We will shake it, then we will put it in our
Turbid precipitation.
turbid. We will use the turbid for the estimation of sulfate. Usually we see that. So what will happen? That scattering, that's sometimes the turbid is very more, means what will happen? The scattering is that scattering radiation may be slightly differ from the original wavelength. So that the mother wavelength, maybe it may, say for example, students, so this here you can see some radiation gone. These are called the cuvettes. In cuvette, we can see some turbidic material will be there. What will happen? Some scattering will be taken place. So this scattered wavelength may be same of this original one, or maybe different, or maybe slightly different from the original one. So this is called regarding the scattering. So I hope you know what is the basic difference between absorption and emission and scattering. Absorption means is nothing but, students, low to higher. Best example, students, when you are in first year BSc, and you will have some knowledge only, but when you enter into second year BSc, you will have a good kind of knowledge. So when you are going from first year to second year, means you are getting very, your knowledge was increasing. That means you're observing, your observing of knowledge is very high. Say for example, I think you are all very good intelligence students. For example, if any student got caught in gate means the person who had very lot of backlogs, so he won't be promoted to the next semester. What will happen? He will be in the same state only. Instead of going third year, he will stay only in second year. What will happen? He will be very under pressure. He may sometimes, due to that pressure, he may lose some, he may lose his knowledge also. That is called the emission, which usually not taking place in your case. Just by remembering, I'm saying. So high to low means it's called emission. Low to high means called absorption. Scattering, which is quite different. Scattering, the turbidic methods will be there. So that scattering may be there. It's some, these are called very high knowledge persons, which you can consider like them. Scattering is different. So I hope you have got some basic knowledge regarding the scattering, emission, and absorption. I hope. I need, if you have any questions regarding in the scattering and absorption, emission, will you can ask now, or you can continue to the next slide. Now let us continue to the absorption. When atoms or molecules absorb light, the incoming energy excites. So they absorb, whenever the energy was observed, the incoming energy excites a quantized structure to the higher energy level. That means that the quantization, that excitations will be taking place. So what will happen? Low to high will be taking place. The type of exciting depend upon the wavelength of the light, students. See, that is very important. The type of exciting. So each and every element, or each and every molecule will have a different range of they need a different type of wavelength. So during that wavelength, it depends upon the absorption. So electrons are promoted to the higher orbitals by ultraviolet or visible light. So this usually we use, so with the help of ultraviolet, visible, Vibrations are excited by the infrared light and rotations are excited by the microwaves. What will happen when these waves are projected to a particular molecule or atom? What will happen? The electrons will be excited, quantization will be taking place, there will be some structural high energy absorption will taking place, so they will jump to that particular area. So this, while we are there, while your jumping is taking place, there will be discrete lines will be there. If you know there's some basic idea about the atomic structures and all those things, you know what is those lines. So based on the exerting energy, that amount of energy is differ from the different element. So potassium will have one type of energy absorption will be taking place, calcium will be have another type of absorption, lithium will be, cesium will have. So like that, based on the absorption energy we will calculate. So let's continue to our next lecture. An absorption spectrum is absorption of light as a function of the wavelength. Yes, students. Usually, this is what usually see. The absorption is nothing, but it's a function of wavelength. And also, spectrum of atom or a molecule depends upon the energy level. This is what I said my previous energy level, structure. Absorption spectra are usually identify the compound. Yes, it's absorption spectrum. Absorption spectrum, emission spectrum. You know what is a spectrum? No, if your simple structures that in your plus two, we read only one hydrogen spectrum. We have read about the hydrogen spectrum. So like that, nitrogen will have one type of spectrum, potassium will have some type of spectrum. So that energy releasing spectrum will be differ from the one compound to another compound. So like this, we are going to analyze our sample, what type of element is there. So measuring the concentration of an absorption spectrum species in a sample is accomplished by our famous law. What is that law? Everyone should say this. What is this law? Sorry, you're not listening, I think so. Anyhow, the famous law called Beer and Lambert's law. So this Beer and Lambert's law. So all this absorption will be calculated by our Beer and Lambert's law. I will continue this. So what is this Beer and Lambert's law? We will see this. So visual spectrum, you know what is a visible spectrum? The slide picture for your understanding of visual spectrum. And overall, students, this is the electromagnetic spectrum. So electromagnetic spectrum, you can see the gamma rays and type of transition. You can see some nuclear transitions will be taking place. X-rays, you can see some internal electrons, ultraviolet rays will pick up the outer electrons. In near infra, outer electrons and molecular vibrations will be taking place. And radio waves, nuclear spin flips, energy levels split in so magnetic field, students. There is a magnetic quantum, spin quantum number, magnetic quantum number. You should know all those things. So these usually we read in our basics of atomic structure. So overall, students, this is regarding the electromagnetic spectrum, and these are the different rays type of radiations, and these radiations we usually do for our analysis exam. So let us come to our original point of Beer and Lambert's law. So Beer and Lambert's is a linear relationship between the absorption and concentration of an absorbing species. Based on this only, we are going to based on this great man Beer and Lambert's law only, in our laboratory our spectrometer is working. Our phosphorus, we are analyzing phosphorus in our soil laboratory because of this Beer and Lambert's law. So Beer and Lambert's law is a linear relationship between the absorption and concentration of an absorbing species. See, student, remember this line. Single line will give a very typical answer for you. Absorption, concentration of absorption species. In general, how we have to write a Beer and Lambert's law in general? A is equal to A lambda into B into C. This is a simple notation of Beer and Lambert's. So where A is nothing but measured absorbance. How much absorbance is there? A is nothing. A is the wavelength. A lambda is nothing but the wavelength depending upon the absorptivity coefficient. B is a path, the path of line, and C is the analytical concentration. So how much concentrate we have when working in a concentrating unit. So generally, if you are using molarity solutions, so what we have to, if you are using molarity solutions, what we can use this law in a different way. That is nothing but A is equal to ellipson. Ellipson means this symbol. This symbol is called ellipson, students. Ellipson B into B into C. So B is nothing but, we know what is a B is a path of light. C is a concentration of our particular analyte. Analyte means the compound, a particular extractant. So we usually, if it is alkali salts, we use also an extractant. For acid salts, we use Brand-Cruz extractant. So that extractant concentration is nothing but C. B is nothing but your path of the light. And ellipson is nothing but wavelength dependent minus molecular absorptivity coefficient with the units of per meter and per centimeter. So just remember this one, students. In overall, for your examination point of view, you want to know the spectroscopy meters completely, the absorption is completely learned in Beer and Lambert's law. We will see another by continuing this one. Experimental measures usually made in terms of transmittance, which is identified. Generally, students nowadays, nowadays in soil laboratories, we are getting reading from both absorbance. Mostly we took in absorbance, but some old instruments we can get transmittance also. So if you get our concentration in transmittance T, we can define T is equal to I by I naught. So I is nothing but light intensity after it passes through the sample. It is called the sample, and I naught is nothing but initial light intensity. The relationship between the absorbance and transmittance is nothing but minus log T. That is called to log. If you apply logarithm, log T is equal to minus log into 1 by 1, sorry, 101 I by I naught. So I will show in the symbol. Yeah, this is one student. So I naught means this is the original wavelength which usually sends. So this is our sample, in cuvette sample, and I means it is nothing but whatever the transmit, what some energy, some light will observe here, and something will be releases here. The color is not working. Yeah. So I naught and I. So some energy will be, some sort of light will be transmitted. So this will be calculated. Sir, but due to the advancement in instrumentation, modern absorption instruments can be usually displaying data either in transmittance, we can get in transmittance, which we usually follows, or in percentage transmittance, or even in absorbance. Mostly, we usually take this absorbance. An unknown concentration of sunlight can be determined by measuring an amount of light that a sample observes by applying our so-called famous Beer and Bees law. So if the absorbability coefficient is not known, the unknown concentration can be determined using the working curve and absorbance versus concentration of standard curve. Could you follow this line? Can anyone have got idea by reading this line? Please read. If you have any idea, just say to me. Do you got any idea regarding this last line? The last line indicates that if the absorbability coefficient is not known, the unknown concentration can be determined using a working curve of absorbance versus the concentration derived from the standards means. Best example, whenever we are going to do analysis of phosphorus or potassium in our soil laboratory, we usually prepare one standard sample, some working samples, 5 standard samples. Mostly in soil science, we will go for 20, 30, 40, 50. I think like that they will go, or 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. They will go like this, or 20, 40, 80, 90, or some people may go for up to 110 also. So based on their based on area or based on their concentration, they will go for that working curve. So they will draw that curve, and they will compare that. They will compare their unknown sample. We don't know what is the coefficient here, how much absorbance was there in that particular sample. We don't know. So what we will do, we will compare our unknown concentration with our standard curve. Standard curve, usually we draw in a graph, one standard graph we usually draw in our potassium and phosphorus. I will show in this slide, next slide. Yeah, working curve. So let me explain about the working curve. Working curve is a plot of electrical signal the instrument or detector is responded. Working curve is nothing but the concentration, then the values given by the working curve. Those are called the instrumental readings as a function of analyte concentrate. Best example, say for example, whenever you're doing analysis of potassium in flame photometer, what we will do, first we will feed our blank is nothing but our distilled water, so it will show zero reading, and we will use our potassium chloride, and we will feed it. We will feed it in 20 ppm concentration. So it will take as a standard 20 ppm. At least it should give 19.5 or zero point 0.5 we can accept as an error. Like that, for 30 it will go, it should give at least from 29.9, like that. So we will give, so it will give some values. We will get some values. Instead of potassium, I can give better example is phosphorus. So whenever we prepare 20 ppm or 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 ppm, we prepare very less. So we will get some value, some electrical signals from that instrument. You will note it down. So obtain, measure the signal from a series of standards is known as known concentration. Say for example, students. Say for example, this is the usually we will draw a curve. So these are the concentrates or values, and these are the known values. So we'll draw something. Say for example, we get some 10 first concentration, we will note it down here. We get 20, we will note it down here. We will got 30, like that. So like that, we will get some known concentration value. So the working curve are used then to determine the concentration of unknown sample to calibrate the linearity of the analytical system. So what will happen after getting the 5 samples? So after getting 5 samples, what I will do? We will connect this all this known concentration in a straight line. Now, what we will do? We will go and put our known concentration, our unknown sample reading in the instrument. So we will get some amount of 13 point something. Say for example, this is 0, 10, 20, and 30. Take a for your understand, take up to 30. So I get somewhere from 15. So I get here. So what we will do? We will put a line. We will put a dot here. We'll go for a straight line, and we will put it down somewhere. We will get. So for example, here also 0, some 20, some 30 will get somewhere we get. Say for example, here is there is some 10 is there. That means what is the meaning of that? We get around 10 ppm. 10 ppm. So we are going to know how much concentration is there. How much concentration is there? We can easily find out with a known concentration. So this is called the working curve. This is called working curve. For potassium and phosphorus we will do. But students, for 1 or 2 samples, especially in phosphorus, for 1 or 2 samples, we can go and draw this curve. But we have some hundreds of samples, some 600.
अरे सुइया लगवाओ कि रहल है
अरे
700.
हैं
सुइया लगवा
आवे थरका आवे जो
डॉक्टर ने गलत लगवा दी।
Will do. Say for example, students, if I have some 600 samples of phosphorus, will you follow the same standard curve method? Let's continue the class on yeah, this is what I want to explain. This is the absorbance. So we'll take absorbance here. So 0.2, 0.4 like this. And concentration. These are the known concentrations 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. So generally we will take the readings, the signals. These are the readings from the instrument. So here one instrument again 2, 4, 6, 8. So we're going to join this. And whenever, say for example, if my value comes between the point this here, somewhere I get here. So I will put a dot here. I'll go for a straight line. Then I will go for down here. So how much? Almost I get some 5 something, 5.2 or something I get. So like this, I'm going to analyze with my samples. So there is another method in Excel sheet. We usually feed that feed and we will regress it. The regression factor we use in our analysis. So limitations of the Lambert's and Beer law. So this much beauty of this Lambert's law, there are some limitations are there. The linearity of the Beer-Lambert's law is limited by the chemical and instrumental factors. There are some chemical and instrumental factors. There are some sort of limitation for this Beer and Lambert's law. Very first one, deviations in absorptivity coefficient at higher concentration due to the electrostatic interaction between the molecules in the close proximity. So due to when there is a very high concentration is there, what will happen? There will be deviation from the coefficient. So if this is the condition, what should we do, students? What should we do? There's high concentrations is there beyond our coefficient, absorbent coefficient. What should we do? What should we do?
Standards.
One example, students. Oh, sorry, I think 1 minute. I will give one example. Say you have drawn up to the 100. Your graph limit is up to 100. But some samples are showing around 120 or 102, 103. So what should we do? This is called deviation from absorption coefficient. So what should we do? Anyone can answer. What should we do if there is a deviation from coefficient? What should we do? So to overcome this deviation in absorption coefficient factor at high concentrations due to the electrostatic interactions between the molecules. So instead, if we have this problem, we have to reduce the concentration of a particular sample, or we have to improve our curvature to curvature length, that our standard curve length. And another problem is that scattering of light due to the particulate in the sample. So if there is any small particles, if there is no proper filtering is not there, means what will happen? There will be some sort of scattering will be taking place. That is a problem. And if you use some, there is some problem with fluorescence and phosphorescence sample. If your sample was fluorescence, but itself it will give some fluorescence. If you emitted some light radiations will emit it. So in that condition, we'll have some problem. Changes in the refractivity index at high analytical concentrate, same problem. And shifts in chemical equilibrium has a function of the concentration. So sometimes there will be some shifting, some chemical, there will be some reverse reactions will take in place. There is a chance of shifting of equilibrium will be there in the concentrations. And non-monochromatic radiations, deviations can be minimized by using relatively flat part or absorption spectrum, such as maximizing the absorption band. This is what's true. So mostly if that particular range, so for example 760 nanometers was not enough, we can go for more length of monochromatic light to overcome this deviations. And stray light means it is something called deviation from the original light. So the light may comes from then the original light source will get some lighting from another source also. But the sample may emit itself, sometimes sample itself may emit some light. So like this, we have some sort of limitations in our Beer and Lambert's law. So these are the very small limitations, but if you go for very careful analytical management, we can overcome this problem. So this is up to the absorption spectrophotometer. And coming to the emission, so emission spectroscopy, atoms or molecules that excited to higher energy level can decay to the over energy level by emitting radiation. From high to low, what will happen when they jump from the high to low energy? What will happen? We can see some emission, some luminance will be taken place, some radiations will be open up. So for atom excited at high temperature energy sources, this light emission is commonly known as atomic or optical emission. Usually we will see more about this in atomic absorption spectroscopy. And for the atoms existed with the light, it can be atomic fluorescence spectroscopy. So the emission, if the emission was is commonly at atomic or optical emission, it will study as atomic emission spectroscopy. Or for the atom excited with the light, if it is a source, if the exciting is the light, it is called the atomic fluorescence. So we will read about these two phenomenons in atomic emission spectroscopy or atomic fluorescence spectroscopy. Okay, students, now we will see about these two type of emissions. For the molecules, it is called fluorescence if the transition is between the states of the same spin and phosphorescence if the transition occurs between the state of different spin. What is a spin? Spin is a spin quantum number. Okay, for you have to know what is a spin quantum number. So for the molecules, it's called fluorescence means if the transition is between states of the same spin and phosphorescence if the transition occurs between the state and different spin. So then only we can see fluorescence. The emission intensity of emitting substance is linearly proportional to the unlit concentration at the lower concentration, as it is useful for quantitating the emitting species. The emission intensity of an emitting substance is linearly proportional to the unlit concentration at the low concentration. So low concentration is it is linear, very less, and useful for the quantitating the emitting species. So this is regarding. So atomic absorption spectrometer, mostly halogen cathode lamp. Personally, I have seen this halogen cathode lamp will be there, and you can see some radiations will be taking place here. Some lens will be there. Here, sample will be atomized. Exciting will be taking place. Then what will happen? These are the lens. From this lens, it will go for monochromator. Here we will fix in monochromator. Everything is completely computerized. We will based on our interest, we will see which element we need, and we go for detector, and detector will send the signals to the amplifier, or amplifier directly will get the information. This is the principle behind the atomic absorption spectrometer. Here the absorption, how much absorption of energy taking place we can see. Yes, that is called atomic absorption spectrometer. So overall, student, this is very interesting. In coming to this instrumentation, we can see light source. So very first, we're talking about the spectro. Always we talk about the always we talk about the spectroscopy means we have to know it's a completely light source. The light source is usually halogen cathode lamp. Remember, students, most of our instruments we use halogen cathode lamp of the instrument that is being measured. And lasers are used in research instruments. Mostly lasers also is nowadays using in research instrument. Since the lasers are intense enough to excite atoms higher energy level, a low atomic absorption and atomic fluorescence measures in a single instrument. So, due to the lasers have an intensity enough to excite the atoms high energy levels, they allow atomic absorption and atomic fluorescence measured in the single instrument if we use the lasers. The disadvantage of this narrow band light source is that only one element is measured at a time. The only problem is this: for example, for zinc, you have to measure one time. For calcium, sorry, for copper, we used to for one time. So like this This is only one sort of big problem in this instrumentation. Halide cathode lamp. Coming to the halide cathode lamp, how this halide cathode lamp will be there? Halo cathode lamps are a type of discharge lamp that produce narrow emission from the atomic species. So they will produce very narrow emissions of the different atomic species. So they get their name from the cup-shaped cathode. If you see that, if anybody have experienced this cathode lamp, the lamp will be very cup shaped, which is made the element of interest. So that is each and every cathode lamp will be made from different elements. They use some people may use different elements. They may use some copper cathode, copper element, different elements. Based on their interest, we have a different cathode lamps will be there. That cup shape material alloy cathode lamp will be there. So electric discharge ion as the rare gas element. So what will happen? Some rare gas that when we pass electricity in that alloy cathode lamp, what will happen? Ion as a rare gas elements which are accelerated into the in the cathode and clutter or moved metal ions into the gas phase. So what the particular this particular excited atom will move to the gas phase. The collision with the gas atoms are excited. The metal atoms higher energy to lower energy and decay. So what will happen? Due to the passage of electron discharge in that particular cathode lamp, what will happen? The rare gas ions will be ionized and excited. What will happen? Electrons excited, the metal ions from higher energy to the higher energy level. So everything will move to the higher energy level. What will happen? Automatically, some rays,
Absorption.
some light will be emitted. So that emitted light we use, that monochromatic light we use in our analysis. So for example, this is what, so this is think this is your, so I'm supplying some power in this anode cathode lamp. What will happen? There will be some sort of gas will be there, some inert gas will be there. What will happen? It will be excited. They will move from higher energy level. What will happen? They will release some energy. So light will be comes out. This light we use it for our regular analysis. Okay, students. So regarding the atomizer. So very first we know what is a yes, we have seen anode cathode lamp. Now we will talk about the atomizer, how this atomizer will be worked. So atomic absorption spectrometer requires that analyze atoms to be in a gas phase. So that liquid phase cannot be there. So that should be atomized. That means that particular sample should be in a gas phase. The ions or atoms in the sample must undergo dissolution and vaporization in the high temperature. So whenever we feed the sample to a particular instrument, what will happen? It should be dissolution and vaporization in high temperature, so such as flame or graphite furnace. So if you see that, I think if you see our so-called flame photometer, what will happen? Whenever we feed a sample, what will happen? It will completely convert it all into vapors and some gas phase. So flame of atomic absorption can analyze the solution, while in a graphite and furnace, atomic absorption can accept the solution slurries and soil samples. So what will happen? It will be that excited gas as the gas sample, that vaporized sample can be analyzed by our instrument. So flame uses a slot of type of burner to increase the path of the length and therefore increases the total absorbance. So what will happen? Whenever that particular excitance, that particular absorbance is more, when that particular absorption is there, we can, that particular exciting length is will be taking place. So we can calculate. The sample solutions are usually aspirated with the gas flow into the nebulizer mixing chamber to the small droplets before entering into the flame. So when the nebulizer will be sucked and converted into vapors, and that vapors uh, will 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 excite that the particular element will be excited. What will happen? Some energy will be observed. So that absorption will be read by our particular instrument based on the Beer and Lambert's law. And we are going to calculate that how much percentage of energy is observed. So how much per the percent is nothing but how much quantity of element is present, particular compound is present in our particular sample. We can analyze. This is called atomizer. So graphite furnace have several advantages over the flame. It is much more efficient atomizer than flame, and it can directly accept very small absolute quantity of sample. If we have more graphite furnace, this is the best example. It also provides reducing environmental for easy oxidizing elements. Samples are placed directly in the graphite furnace, and furnace is electrically heated several steps to dry the samples and ash organic matter and vaporize the atomic unlike the atoms. So instead of nebulizers, if you have this graphite furnace, there are a lot of advantages. We can vaporize, we can make the we can prepare the sample very easily. Electrically heated steps, everything will be done. We can dry the sample and we can ash the organic matter, everything, if you have this furnace sample. I will show the image of that particular. So light separation and detection. In atomic absorption spectrometer, what will happen? Use of monochromators or detectors for the UV and visible lights. So main purpose of the monochromator is to isolate the absorption line from the background light due to the interference. So we need only one type of light. So we no need, so for example, if we want only UV light, we want to separate the visible light. So this light separation will be separate that interference. So simple detection of detected atomic absorption instrument often replace the monochromator with a band pass interference and filter. In simple way, it will allow only one type of wavelength. So photomultiplier tubes are mostly common detectors in our atomic absorption spectrometer. So there will be one photomultiplier tubes will be there. So those tubes will filter the light. They will filter the light. They will allow only monochromatic light. Only one type of light will be allowed, and but that one type of light only is used for our particular light, for our sample analysis. So these are the photo multiplier tube, students. Usually, I think if you see practically, if you see the radiations will be there, I think it's where the these are the high voltage passes will be there. There's the current problem. These are secondary electrons, so diodes. So all this light will be there. So only one kind of light will be moved. After a lot of radiation, only one kind of light will be current and voltage amplifier will be moved. So I think I don't want to confuse by showing this image to you. Just there is some photo multiplier tubes will be there in AS. So this is a flame atomic absorption spectrometer. This is a kind of typical instrument. Actually, this instrument is off. If it is instrument is on, you can see some flames, some acetylene gas we usually uses here. Some blue color flames will be usually burn in here. That gases will escape through from. There will be some chimney will be there. This is a typical instrument of flame atomic absorption spectrometer. I hope how many members have you seen, but I don't know. But in my university it is there. So this is called the graphite furnace atomic absorption. This is very advanced model, students. This is usually we use. This is usually in India is there, but graphite furnace is very easy. There is no problem. We can all organic matter, everything will be decayed. Sample will be dry, everything will take place. But this is not much common in India, but this is very common. But this is not that much common. So with this, we have read about something about the atomic absorption spectrum lecture. So atomic emission spectroscopy. So atomic emission spectroscopy, AES or OES, orbital emission spectroscopy. There is, I don't know, they have mentioned AES, uses quantitative measurement of the optical emissions. So optical emission spectrum or atomic emission spectrum is emissions from the excited atoms to determine the unlit concentration. Here you can say the emitted energy is usually calculated, but in previous in atomic absorption, the absorption energy is usually calculated, but here we can see some emission energy is calculated. Unlit atoms in the solution are aspirated into the exciting region where they are dissolved, vaporized, and atomized by the flame discharge or plasma. What will happen? The energy will be emission when there is a jump from the high to low. So these high temperature atomizer source provide a sufficient energy to promote the atoms in the higher energy levels. So this promotes the higher energy levels. So the atoms decay back to their lower energy levels by emitting some light. Since the transitions are between the distinct atom energy levels, the emission lines or spectra are very, very narrow. So whenever there is exciting will be taking place, there will be some absorption will be there. So when the energy was gone, again they will set back to their original energy level. So while coming back to the original level, there will be some emission of lines, and that is very narrow. Though the spectra of multi-element samples can be very congested, and spectral separation of nearby atomic transition require high resolution spectroscopy. So when this emission of this energy was very less, what will happen? We have to use very high resolution spectrometer. Then only we can calculate this. So since all atoms in the sample are excited simultaneously, they can be detected simultaneously, and is a major advantage as a atomic compared to the atomic absorption spectroscopy. This is the major advantage, students. Why? Because you know in atomic absorption spectrometer we have to calculate each one and one, but here in this emission spectroscopy we can calculate at a time many elements when compared with atomic absorption spectroscopy, AS. But here AES, it is very easy. We can calculate all the more than one in one shot. So this is a scheme of experimental. So some excited atoms will be there. The excited source, excited the lens will be there. There automatically what will happen? Some discrete wavelength will be there. So generally emission means with the discrete element, some wavelength will be released. So that wavelength will be detected from from wavelength selector will be there. So that will be identified by the detector, and finally we'll get some output. So each and every element will have a different emissions. Potassium will have one type of element. Fluorine will have one type of emissions will be there. Nitrogen will have one type of emission. So based on that, we're going to calculate how much element. So instrumentation, how this instrumentation is there, sir, for this emission spectroscopy. As in atomic absorption spectroscopy, sample must be converted into free atoms. Yes, we have to. The sample should not be in a molecule form. It should be in free atoms, usually in high temperature and excited source. So here the sample the atom should be excited. So liquid samples are nebulized and carried into the excited source by the flowing of gas. Some any gas like acetylene gas or anything gas, we will use some flowing of gas. Soil samples can be introduced into the source by a slurry or by a laser ablations of the solid sample in a gas stream. So solids can also be directly vaporized to the excited by sparking between the electrodes of the by a laser. So generally the sample can be sparked, can be sprayed, or nebulizer can be used. So the excited source must be dissolved. So whatever the sample was taken by the instrument, it should be dissolved. That means it will mixed, it should be atomized. That means excited, and excited the unlit particular atom. So it should be atomized, means the complete division should be taking place, and exciting should be taking place. Exciting means that particular changes in atoms should be taking place. So a variety of excitation sources are described in the separate document. So direct current plasma, actually these are the different plasmas, different filters we use. Flame inductive coupled plasma, very costly instrument is there, and laser inductive breakdown, laser induced plasma, microwave induced plasma, and spark or arc plasma. So these are different plasma. These are different couples we use it for our variety of our analyzer. These are the students ICP, atomic inductive coupled plasma is this is emission spectroscopy. This is a typical instrument. This is present in usually we see in I think I didn't see this, mostly in research laboratories would be there. Now we will talk about inductively coupled plasma is an analytical technique used for the detecting the trace metals in the environmental sample, mostly heavy metals, pollutants. All these things can be analyzed in this particular inductive coupled plasma. The primary goal of inductive coupled plasma is to get the element to emit characteristic wavelength specific light which can be measured. So what is the primary goal of inductive coupled plasma? Is to get the element to emit characteristic wavelength specific light which can then be measured. An inductive coupled plasma can be used for the quantitative analysis for the following areas. So in this inductive coupled plasma, use it for what type of quantitative analysis? Mostly we use for rock, minerals, all mineralogy, agriculture, animal husbandry, chemical ecology, environmental science. Almost all departments can be used. And also environment, food industry, including purification, distribution of water, the analysis of elements. Not readily added, but this type of facility is not readily analyzed in so-called by the in atomic absorption spectrometer. We can't go for sulfur boron. We can't go for analysis. An inductive coupled plasma requires that elements which should be analyzed in this solution. So the particular analysis, we should confirm that there should particular analysis should be that particular element should be there. An aqueous solution is preferred over an organic solution. While we are using this inductive coupled plasma, we should go for only aqueous solution than the organic solution. As organic solution requires special manipulation prior to the injection in the inductive coupled plasma. So if you want to use any organic solutions, then before going to organic solutions, we have to go for some other manipulations. We have to dilute, or we have to go for some addition of some other solution. It is very difficult. So instead of that, we can go for organic solutions. The soil samples are also discouraged as clogging in the instruments and occur. So what will happen? Sometimes there will be some sort of clogging will be there. If you use some clogging, there is a chance of clogging. So the nebulizer transformations the aqueous solutions into the aerosol. So instead of using organic solvents, we use any simple solutions, means It is easy and it easily can be converted into aerosol. So the light emitted by the atoms of an element in the inductive coupled plasma must be converted into electrical signals that can be measured qualitatively. So what happened whenever that emission is taking place, this inductive coupled plasma will observe the energy and it will convert into electrical signals that is converted into our quantitatively information. So this accomplished by resolving the light into a component radiations, and then measure the light intensity photomultiplier tubes at the specific wavelength for the each element light. So light emitted by the atoms or ions in the inductive coil is converted into electrical signals by the photomultiplier in the spectrometer. The intensity of the electron signal is compared to the previously measured intensities of known concentration of the element at the concentration is computed. Simple. This concept is nothing but our so-called that curve, that graph. Okay, just we are comparing our unknown sample with known concentrations. So each element will have many specific wavelengths in the spectrum which could be used for analysis. That the selection of the best line, the analytic application in the hand requirement considerable experience in the inductive coupled plasma wavelength. So this is inductive coupled plasma is a major role, students. We can analyze the samples at a time. For one more than one element we can analyze at a time. Coming to the next student, so these are the things, these are the wavelength we need. So this is a particular wavelength. For agriculture point of view, we do boron, we go for 249 wavelength. Estimation of detection limit almost 5, we can go for up to micrograms per liter. Copper and iron, which we use it in our agriculture purpose, 32474, the 324.754, limit is up to 6, so 2.254, after we can go for up to, so limitation is 5. So these are the different elements and their wavelength, what type of wavelength we should use, the recommended table of inductive coupled plasma. This is continuation of the table: lead, magnesium, all those things, and silicon, mostly silicon, which is approx, and this is a major component in our soil. So advantages and disadvantages. What are the advantages by using this inductive coupled plasma? Advantages of this inductive coupled plasma, using of the inductive coupled plasma, you include the ability to identify and quantify all elements with the exception of argon. Except argon, we can do almost, we can go for every type of element, because since many wavelengths of the varied sensitivity are available for the determination of any one element, so we can analyze many type of elements except argon. So like that, the inductive coupled plasma suitable for all concentrations from ultra trace level to major components. So we can go and we can trace very small amount of level of element also. We can trace in this inductive coupled plasma when compared with major elements. So detection limits are generally low for most of the elements. The typical range is around 1 to 100 micrograms. So even we almost the limit range we can up to go for 1 to 100 grams per limit. We can go for that limit also. Probably large advantage of employing inductive coupled was preferring the quantitative analysis in the fact that multi-elemental analysis can be accomplished and quite rapidly. That's not nice. Say for example, if you go for AS, atomic absorption spectrometer, what we have to do for each and every element, you have to go for different wavelengths. But here inductive coupled plasma, no need. Just if once we feed the sample, automatically we can get the reading of most of the elements. So a complete multi-element analysis can be undertaken the short of 30 seconds, consuming only 0.5 ml sample solution. See, this is a major advantage inductive coupled stuff. Just we can all within 30 seconds we can take multi-elements by only taking only 0.5 ml of sample. Although in theory all the elements except argon can be determined using inductive coupled plasma, certain unstable elements require special facility for handling the radioactive fume of the plasma. So there is some, so while we have to handle the radioactive fumes, we need some special care. Also inductive coupled plasma difficult handling in halogens, special optics for the transmission of a very short wavelengths and become unnecessary. So if you go for halogens, so we need to take care of some halogens or transmissions for the wavelength. So ultraviolet and visual spectroscopy, this is another simple spectroscopy, is a measure of the wavelength and intensity of absorption near ultraviolet and visual light by a sample. So in this type of spectroscopy we use UV and visual spectroscopy. So ultraviolet and visual are energetic enough to provide outer electron to higher energy levels. So UV Ultraviolet visible spectroscopy usually applied to the molecules of inorganic ions or complex in the solution. So UV and spectral, so visual UV and visual spectrum, UV and visual spectrum have a broad features that are limited use of soils for the sample identification, but very useful for the quantitative analysis. So very quantitative analysis. The concentration of analyte in the solution can be determined by measuring the absorbance at the same wavelength by applying our same favorite law called Beer-Lambert's law. So like that, we can. It is quite very simple. It is not that much complex as compared to the inductive coupled plasma, but here this also can be used for our qualitative measurement. So coming to the instrumentation, how the instrument will be there. So light source is usually a hydrogen or deuterium lamp for UV measurements, and tungsten lamp for our visual. A tungsten lamp, we know our regular bulb. Usually, I think nowadays this bulb was a tungsten bulb was not available in market, but everyone knows this tungsten market. And deuterium light. If you seen in your our phosphorus analyzing instrument spectrophotometer, you can see this deuterium lamp light will be there. UV light for measuring the, if you want to use UV light. So the wavelength of these continuous light source are selected with a wavelength separator using prism or grading monochromator. Simple, students. Either they will use some prism or some grading monochromator will be used. So spectra for getting or for getting a particular wavelength. So spectra are obtained by scanning the wavelength separator, and quantitatively measured can be made from the spectra at a single wavelength. So quantitatively, what will happen by using some monochromator or some prism? What will happen? We get our particular wavelength separator. So this is what, student. This is the lamp. Very simple. So what will happen? Lamp, usually tungsten lamp will be like this, where light will be emitted. So in between, you use some prism or lens. Something will use. So automatically, then the division of light some different light will be separated. In this, we need, in this complete wavelength, we need only one light. We need only one particular monochromatic light we need. So like that, what we will do, we use some filters, some monochromatic filters we use. So that monochromatic filter will be passed through our sample cuvettes. In the sample cuvettes, we usually passes through this. What will happen? Some absorption will take place, transmissions will be taken place. So this transmitted light will be detected by our detector, and it will transfer to our amplifier. From amplifier to the data will be transferred to the readout. So we will get from amplifier, we get our data output will be given. So this is very simple. Usually all our spectrometer, if we're analyzing our phosphorus, we are following this type of spectrometer only. Simple. This is a very old, students, very old instrument. I have seen this. This is a very old instrument. Nowadays is not there, but everything is digitalized. Coming to finally mass spectroscopy. Mass spectroscopy use the difference in the mass to charge ratio. What is the mass to charge ratio? It is mass to charge ratio that usually we read in our atomic structure chapter during your +1 studies. Okay, often ionized atoms or molecules to separate them from each other. So mass spectrometers use the difference in mass to charge ratio of ionized atoms or molecules to separate them from each other. So mass spectrometry is therefore useful. A mass spectrometer is therefore useful for quantization of atoms or molecules, and also for determining the chemical and structural information about molecules. So this mass spectroscopy, what type of instrument we can get? We can get the quantization of atoms and molecules. Also, we can determine the chemical and structural information, which is very important. Structure, mostly for research purpose, this type of instrument is very useful. Structural information about the molecules. So molecules have a distinctive fragmentation pattern. They have a very different fragmentation that provide a structural information to identify the structural compounds. So we can get the what is structural compounds. The general operation of mass spectroscopy is creating a gas phase ion. Naturally, every instrument used to do this. We should convert into gas phase. Separation of ions in the space or time based on their mass to charge ratio. Based on the mass to charge ratio, they will separate all the ions in the particular solution. So measure the quantity of ions present to the mass to charge ratio. What is nothing, students? Just will feed the sample, convert it into gas, divide everything into the some ions or spaces, and they will calculate to the mass to charge, how much mass, how much charge is there. So like that, they will calculate. This mass spectroscopy has been calculated. Now we will see what is the instrumentation. What is the presence of instrumentation? In general, a mass spectrometer consisting of an ion source, a mass selective analyzer, and ion detector. So these are the three components: ion source, mass selective analyzer, and ion detector. So the magnetic sector, in the magnetic sector, quadrupole and time of flight designs are also required. An extraction ion optics to the transfer of ions from source to region into the master, that is nothing but that filters, etc., to pass on that mass analyzer is be needed. The details of the mass analyzer designs are discussed in the individual documents listed below. So we will discuss about this mass analyzer. What are those mass analyzers? Mass spectroscopers: fluorine transforming mass spectroscopy, ion trap mass spectroscopy, magnetic mass spectroscopy, magnetic mass spectroscopy, quadrupole mass spectroscopy, time of flight mass spectroscopy. So these are the different types of mass analyzers. So we see the auto analyzer. Automated analyzer is a set of model model connected in the sequence of performing of automatic chemical analysis. It can be replaced the step-by-step time-consuming process from manual analysis in research laboratories. Mostly this type of auto analyzer students we usually don't see in our regular soil science laboratories. Even in universities also we won't see. You will see only very highly developed research institutes only we can see this auto analyzer. So this auto analyzer is it is a highly advanced method. Nothing is that we no need to go for any sample preparation, no need to go for any manual work. Everything mostly this is usually used in our laboratory, in highly research laboratories like ISRO, DRDO. They will use this auto analyzer in hospitals, some highly advanced hospitals, and some industries. Some industrial candidate they use. So the auto analyzer can be used to analyze the air, water, waste effluents, soil, metal, samples of pharmaceuticals, agriculture, biological materials in agriculture. The auto analyzer is generally used for determining the levels of nitrate and nitrites, and ammonium in plants and soil and water samples. So this auto analyzer, no need all those sample. Just give a sample is enough. Automatically it will analyze. So the operation of this instrument is based on the concept of continuous flow with the allow flexibility and versatility in the chemical analysis, using combination of different modules, making it possible to automate variety of wet chemical processes such as flowing of mixing, clogging, filtering, liquid and liquid extraction. That means mixing means we'll just simply will mix our sample. Coagulating means by adding some other component, coagulating component will make it a small coagulating paste. Or filtering, just simply by filtering into a layer. Or liquid extractant, just by using some liquid extractants. Or incubation concentration, or homogenization, precipitation, decantation, dialysis, distillation, hydrolysis, column, chromatography, and wet chemical pyrolysis. By using some these are actually, if you want to talk about all these things, it is not fair up to your level, but just remember these names: incubation, concentration, homogenization, and precipitation, decanting, dialysis, etc. By using all these methods we can use our day-to-day regular this auto analyzer. Auto analyzer is very advanced instrument, students. Generally we won't use in our soil science laboratory. Only in very advanced laboratories we will go on using. So with this, and coming to the next, the chemical reaction takes place in the flow of liquid air stream, which is controlled by the pump and size of the plastic tubing from module to module. So from module to module, I will show in the coming images, so that you will completely get that the chemical, that liquid and air stream is controlled by the pump and size. So different analytical function as a sample of unknown and standard materials of the reagents, purification and filtering and heating and incubation or reduction and recording or carrying out in each module. So each module, what will happen? There will be purification will be taken place, filtration will take place, heating and incubation will be. So specific analysis require particular sets are main folded tubings, glass connectors, mixing coil, pump tubing, etc. So these are all the equipment, students. All this we need a glass connectors, pump tubings, everything. I will show this one. Yeah, this is what I want to say. These are the typical flow diagram of auto analyzer, students. So the air bubbles will take in place whenever we feed a sample here. Some reagents will be feeded here. What will happen? Some air molecules will be there. So all this will mix here. Here we can see a bubble help with the help of air bubbles. With the help, it will mixing will take place, and again it will go here. Heat bath will be taken place. Some constant swirling will be there. What will happen due to this complete concentration? What will happen? This colorimetric readings. So air bubbles will go as a waste, and pump will be some gas, all this some gas, everything will be, some other elements will go for pumping will taking place, and air bubbles are removed before the colored solutions have been affected. So whenever the air bubbles will remove and color substance will be collected, and that will be recorded in the recorder. So this is regarding the auto analyzer. This auto analyzer is very advanced instrument. Will fit sample reagents here at a time. It will take in place. Mixing, heating, all the air bubbles, coloring will be taking place. Everything will be taking place. Finally, we will read our sample analysis. So actually, there are different types of flow. Is there unsegmented flow showing irregular mixing of separation of successive samples? So uncontrolled flow, unsegmented flow. You can see some irregular controlling. Wall frictioning, fluid viscosity flow, different distance from the centered pipes, and also limited laminar flow of successive pipes. This is one type of flow. And this is the invented flow of successive pipe. This is another type of flow, straight flow. And flowing of high velocity produces turbulence by the wall friction. This is one type of mixing. So these are different type of mixings is there in the auto analyzer. So instrumentation, what is the technique of instrumentation? The technique of auto analyzer 2 was consisting of the following components. Is advanced instrument. Auto analyzer 2 is auto sampler, proportionate pump, manifold, photocalorimeter, and recorder. Recorder means chart recorder. Whatever the sample we get it here. So with this, I think this is a very advanced. This is nothing but quite simple. It's auto analysis proportionations. But with this, we are going to end up our session today.